Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022. It's about 1:30 in the afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States. Our guest needs no introduction to the Judging Freedom audience. Jack Devine is a lifelong career member of the Central Intelligence Agency who held many significant on the field, on the ground, and management positions. Jack, it's a pleasure. Welcome back to the show.
Same here, Judge. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, and an early happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Recently, President Zelensky of the Ukraine told the G20 meeting remotely in Bali what would be necessary for peace talks. And he basically said that Ukraine should not have to compromise on sovereignty, territory, independence, or conscience. Isn't that unrealistic?
Well, I think it's unrealistic to think that you can get peace talks without that. So my point is, look, we all want peace. Who doesn't want peace, right? But we have to be realistic. Is Putin going to accept leaving the Crimea and the Donbass? Why would the Ukrainians settle for the pre-war conditions when they've actually got the Russians on their heels? And, you know, they paid a heck of a price to come back and say, oh, by the way, you know, they destroyed our country. They ripped it apart with, bombing this and bombing that. But we're going to let them go back where they are so they can build a stronger army and come back again. In other words, you can get yourself a temporary quiet, but Putin cannot afford. People don't seem to understand it. In his system, he cannot afford to lose, right? And losing is not making any progress in getting any territory. So
losing for Putin would certainly be giving up Crimea. I mean, I can't imagine him giving up Crimea under any circumstances. Can you?
Right. Yeah, I think that's right. But I don't think the Ukrainians are going to let him hold on to Donbass. So what my point is this. We're basically looking at the winter, right? And the Russians think it favors them, but they forget that the Ukrainians are the one that fought in the winter during World War II. So I don't see how the Russians are going to make any progress during the winter. They're hoping the resolve of the Western alliance folds. And then he expects he'll have a new 180-man army, right? Now, remember, you know this as well as I do. Just because you train 180, assuming you could do that, train them, they're going to go in against hardened warriors, right? Fighting in a place they don't want to fight. So they might be just cannon fodder. So my point is, until the spring, I can't see a change in the game. There's no reason. Why would anybody make a concession? It doesn't meet the low bar for either Russia or the Ukrainians. So I don't see it. And when the winter starts, when the spring comes, then Putin has to say, okay, here we go. And I think he's going to find that he's still on his heels. And I think, and I've always felt, and I think I even mentioned on your show, the real conspiracy inside of Russia begins when it looks like he's actually ground to a halt. And that'll happen. If he doesn't take this 180-man thing and make progress, then...
All right, you're saying 180 man. You mean 180,000 man.
Yes, 180,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking 180 CIA people. That's
okay. But is there serious pressure by NATO, obviously behind the scenes, on President Zelensky to come to some sort of a negotiating table? And if there is, isn't President Zelensky ridiculous to suggest that he would, as a result of the negotiations, get all of his sovereignty back? I mean, why would Putin give that up?
I see no indication whatsoever that the allies are pressing him at this point. I think they know it's futile, and I don't think it's in our agenda, certainly not in our policy agenda, after the amount of money and effort we're throwing in this. You know, why? What is Russia? Where's Russia making progress here? Why would we encourage peace?
Right.
I think it's around the periphery. I don't even think you can find much support in Congress. Remember, there's a group of Democrats on the Hill that tried to push through something like that, and they rescinded it. They said, "Oh, that was just the draft," right? So I don't think there's pressure on Zelensky. The pressure is further out, I think, and a lot of it will depend on economics. But I think right now I see no indication that there's any pressure on him to concede.
Was the Russian evacuation of Kherson a victory for the Ukrainians or a strategic move on the part of the Russians?
Well, when you're on a retreat, that's a strategic move. So yeah, it's a win. It's a win. They had to get out of there, right? So strategically, he better get out of there.
Well, why didn't the Ukrainians shoot the Russian military instead of letting them evacuate? You know they're going to come back.
Well, I don't know that to be the case. I don't. My experience with the Ukrainians in this war is they're not letting any Russian walk past it without getting shot. So letting them. There might have been a technical reasons why, but they're not letting the Russian army retreat without shooting them. Okay. So whatever you see on that score, I take with a big grain of salt. They are really angry, and Putin has his own issues, but this is where people sitting around talking about peace, they need to go talk to people who've been fighting, family members dying, their country being destroyed. You want to see anger, it's there, and they're not going to let the Russians off easy. No.
What issues does Putin have? Is he still being pressured from his right flank for not being aggressive enough? Is he being pressured by people who believe that the military incursion shouldn't be happening at all, or is he still the king of the hill, gets his way in everything?
I think he's still king of the hill. But the hill's getting smaller and starting to erode, right? But I don't think I think he's really fixated and is not going to let either the right or the left stop him from trying to have a win. So what they're asking for on the right is, he's doing everything. What more do they want him to do? I mean, frankly, it's use nuclear weapons. So he's frankly, I think he's going to try and keep the right temporized. But if they get too anxious, they're going to find themselves in jail. He's got enough power to handle. He has enough power through the winter. Let's revisit it. You and I promise. Let's get on March 15th, at the Ides of March. We'll get on and take a look at it.
All right, let's talk about the winter. How are Ukrainians who live in the cities, let's take the capital, for example, Kyiv, going to get through the winter without electricity, heat, and water?
Well, first of all, they will have, they're pretty creative people. Let me just say, they're not going to be totally without those. The more the Russians stay out of their way, they will more quickly than most people realize get electricity up. There'll be enough water. But you're talking about, the bombing of London, right? This is what we're here. This is, an assault on their person. So yeah, how did they get through Stalingrad, right? How did they get through it? Real grit. So yeah, they'll put another coat on and they'll eat less. It'll be cold, but I think people are making a huge mistake if they think the Ukrainians are somehow going to fold. I'm betting. Here's my bet with the judge. We're still with them, and they're still fighting come March 15th.
Why do we have 40,000 American troops in Poland if they're not planning to move south into the Ukraine?
Well, I think we've always had I don't know what the numbers are, but Poland has always been a strategic ally and a place for us to position soldiers. But
the 101st Airborne just flew there. Now, why is the 101st Airborne in Poland at the same time the Polish president is saying, let's take back Ukraine, or take back Crimea?
One of my grandsons in the 101st Airborne. So the point is, they wanted to demonstrate to Mr. Putin that, we're going to be on your border, right? But there's a second part of it that I'm assuming there's a lot of logistical support for the weaponry they're getting. It's not falling out of the sky. So you would think a good place to be to assist the Ukrainians is on the border. It's not to get ready to go into Ukraine. I don't think we need to go in. They're doing just fine, provided we can. It's a bit like my fight with them with the Mujahideen. Mujahideen didn't need us fighting with them. They needed the weapons, right? And they needed supplies. So I think the same thing is true here. And I don't think anybody that I know is talking about us going in any form at this point. But showing strength around the border and providing them with help is
what is the intelligence community, your former colleagues, telling the White House about the future course of the war? Get ready for 180,000 new troops, but they're not that well trained, so don't worry about them. I mean, that would overwhelm. That would be 10 times, well, not 10, but it would be a number of times what Ukraine has there. 180,000 new troops on top of Russian regulars.
You know, you got to put shoes on them. You better put shoes and give them ammo. I mean, they really have shown themselves. There's books that are going to be written about new war and the role of technology. And because we were on the side of technology with the Ukrainians, I mean, the Russians have really shown themselves. I mean, I've often thought we've overestimated in the past, but this has even exceeded my expectations at how poor they were set up. You know, sending in 180,000 new troops. First, we're not going to be able to do it. Let's see what happens on this. But what are they going to do? If they go in, Judge, if they go in with the same techniques, half of them will be dead. There's a call for you. If they go
what does the intelligence community tell Joe Biden is the likely future course of the war?
Yeah, I don't know what they'll say. What I would suspect they would say, this is going to be a longer war than people think. That, you know, there isn't going to be peace between now and the middle of next year. And when they come out of the starting gates, they're probably going to not be too far off from where I am. That the Ukrainians, given the amount of weaponry they're getting, and if we sustain the support, those 180,000 troops is going to be in harm's way. And I suspect if they wanted to get out on a limb, they would start talking about what's the real end game. And you and I talked about this months ago, and I wrote it in the Wall Street Journal in March. The real end game here is Putin has to go. I mean, he's cast the die in a way that there's no way you have a peace agreement. He comes back and has champagne, you know, in Berlin or someplace and have a party. I mean, he's in serious trouble, and I don't see him getting out unless we waffle and blow.
What do you mean he's in serious trouble? You just told me he's
losing a war. He was a big guy until the day he went across the border. People were afraid of him and, you know, their power. They were fighting above their weight, and then they get into a real fight. And wow, you know, you think he's proud of his performance? Do you think the people in Russia are saying, "Well done, Vladimir, love you. You really did a lot for us"? Do you think the generals are saying, "Hey, good move. I wish I had thought of that"?
Maybe he's just patient, Jack.
Well, you can be patient and take yourself to the grave. Listen, this is a fight. You know, I'm going to go sit I'm going to get I like to put it in fighting terms. I'm going to go stand in my corner and I'm going to get out of harm's way. Well, the Ukrainians are going to start pounding the.
All right, tell me where we'll be on March 15th.
Well, I think by then they'll start trying to move it, and we'll see what happens. My prediction is they don't make any more progress than they've had already.
Who doesn't make any more progress? The Russians or the Ukrainians?
They're not going to change. The Russians are not going to change the dynamics of the battlefield. That's my prediction. And what I always said is, you know, we're not going to push Putin out. We shouldn't even try. But his own people, no one likes a loser. They certainly autocratic states, when you're a loser, boy, your friends disappear. I think, you know, in March, he will give it a good try, and I think it will how do you remodernize an army in 6 months? I mean, how do you make a new army, a modern army? Yeah, it's not going to happen. So he'll fall on hard times. And he's not going to take that. He's not going to take Ukraine. He's not going to do it.
But
If
your
your
former colleagues have a goal of driving him from office, don't they?
I wouldn't say it's a goal. I think it was beyond everyone's imagination until February. I would think it's an aspiration. In other words, what kind of
aspiration, goal, whatever you want to call it. But
one's proactive.
The American intelligence community, the people that I call the deep state, they want to use the power of NATO and the West to drive Putin from office, don't they? That would be a glorious moment for them.
Well, these hawks that they don't hang out with me. They're not.
You're a hawk.
They're not as bold as your contacts in that world. Mine are much more measured. But let me tell you, and I'm thinking of this, and this is the first time I've aired it out loud, and you can shoot me down if you like. I'm sure your audience will. But where's the big game? What's the big play on the board, right? What do we want in this world? We don't want just peace in Ukraine for a temporary. I think we want peace in a different kind of world. And I would tell you, if Putin were to leave, all right, if this Ukraine thing turns this into he leaves, there's an opportunity there. There's no reason why Russia should be in an adversarial position with us. It's not ideologically opposed to the West. So I would really encourage that we help re-strengthen, rebuild a relationship with Russia. And then if you looked at the world, we were talking 6 months ago, the march of autocratic governments. That sounds kind of hollow today. If Russia, in the process of this, ends up in a relationship with the West, think of where China is. Where is China as the lone wolf out there? And does that enhance the prospect for peace?
All right.
China, so what I want to say is let's get bogged down in Ukraine, but that's my hope very clearly. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm only taking it up to March 15th, right? But
Jack, who has 900?
Cannot stay. This guy cannot stay as a world actor, commit the atrocities, invade countries, invade Europe, and expect to go on and happy days are here again. That's not going to happen.
Jack, who has 900 military installations around the world, Russia or the United States?
Well, I certainly hope we are the one that has 900, because otherwise the Russians...
We're the ones that are building empire, aren't we?
Listen, let's not get confused who America is. It is the most powerful nation on the face of the earth. So, okay.
You're incorrigible, Jack.
Well, let me put it this way: the United States. I really feel that I spent my life fighting for what I believe is the American exceptionalism. I don't think we're around the world so we can regain islands, right, and colonialize the world. I don't think that's why we're there. I think our presence there is to protect friends. Be helpful.
Why did we overthrow the Ukraine government in 2014? Your buddies in the CIA did that.
Not to my knowledge. They never admit that to me. No, I don't see that. I don't
never admit it. They're the best liars on the planet. Of course, they're not going to admit it. They steal secrets and they lie about it.
Well, let me put it this way. I don't know who did it, but most of my Ukrainian friends, and some of them were right in the firing line, said, we did it. Well, this is what we wanted. This is what we want. Now, look what happened. If people forget the Soviet Union and today Russia, they get confused. The Soviet Union included the Ukraine and the Balkans. It was a powerful country. With Ukraine, they're a bigger world player, economically, breadbasket, industrial, and some real talent. Without it, again, they're showing themselves to be a third-rate power. They got nuclear weapons, so it always equals the playing field. But Ukraine was something they really wanted. And if we want to give it to them, then we're just asking ourselves, hey, let's beef up our adversary. Let's give him we're in a boxing ring. Let's put some lead in his boxing gloves, right? So listen, I think we're moving in the right direction. Now, maybe we should have done things to stop, to cauterize the situation so the Russians didn't dare invade, but that's with hindsight. But I don't have any problem with, listen, I applaud the Orange Revolution that they got rid of a government that was, potentially puppet government for the Russians wanted. It's not a secret. I mean, all their writings, everything, they want Ukraine. It's there. He says it. It's mine. I own it. Now, Kiev existed long before Moscow, but he owns it. Somehow he has the divine right that it's his. So I'm not giving credit. I'm not giving credit to the CIA for that one.
Okay. Jack, I will let you go. It's always a pleasure, my man.
Always. And I know it makes your audience happy.
I won't even begin. I won't even begin to read the emails. But
no, please. I'm a very sensitive guy. I mean, I can't take this abuse. I mean, and so
thank you, Jack. All the best.
I enjoy the opportunity because I think you got to.
And a happy Thanksgiving to you and your
tuned in at least. Same to you and your audience.
Thank you.
We have much to be thankful for in this country.
Yes, we do.
Bye.
Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.